Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode. Really excited today. We've got why are you laughing menacingly? Because I know. What do you know?
I know that today is an interview.
Who told you, man?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah?
I have discovered your plan and I have ruined it, shoving you out of the room for once.
What? Get up.
Yes,
Dude, get off.
this is my interview with
These aren't
Michael
even your
Gallucci, the lead singer of
the hell?
Antillion. Welcome to Two Guys, Same Person.
But yeah, that was certain.
And it's stuck.
It stuck. I never looked back from there. I really enjoyed jazz. I'd never actually had plans to like specifically get into making rock music. I just enjoyed playing music at the time. And then I stumbled into my first band in like the summer of, between junior and senior year of high school with some guys who were like several years older. So chill for just like accepting a 16-year-old just like driving 45 minutes to like show up. You know, like they're like living in a house of like all their homies like smoking weed and like drinking, and like they're just like ordering like mad pizzas to practice, and I'm just there like having the time of my life with like a Coke Zero and like 2 slices. I'm like, yeah, dudes, let's.
Cool,
and
though.
We were making like, it was like John Mayer-y, like kind of folky, just guitar-driven pop blues,
Did you guys play for a while?
We did kind of, like, we were together for basically a year and a half, long enough to write and record an EP, but we never like played live. Couldn't find a drummer, the classic ailing of literally every band that's ever existed.
Yeah.
And then just like people problems broke them up, but it was still an awesome experience, and like it was such a productive and fulfilling creative environment. It like really kind of opened my eyes to like, oh my God, like this is what being in a band could be. And like the music was so good. And like before the band kind of broke up just because of that, like the personal relationships, like we really had this feeling like, dude, we could be big. Like this could be like radio freaking music. You know what I mean? So I think that's when the itch really bit me, when I was like,
the next question on here is literally, when did music become the leading hobby? Right? And then when did that hobby turn into no, let's fucking do this?
Right, yeah.
So it sounds like now.
Yeah, exactly. So like it really became something that I knew I wanted to pursue, like probably around like junior, senior year of high school.
Okay.
I think like the concert where I like had this thought, like my first like real big concert that was like my own like artist that I wanted to go see with my friends. I saw 21 Pilots in their Blurry Face era. Wow. They put on a great show. I wish I could have seen them even earlier, but I mean, it was still amazing.
Yeah.
And at the end of the show, like everyone in the crowd was just like glowing and buzzing and sweating and red cheeks. And I looked around at my friends and I was like, oh my God, like we're all like so happy and connected in this moment. I was like, I bet the only people who feel like crazier and more wild and alive than we do right now are the 2 guys on stage.
Yeah.
And like that was the thought that went through my head. And that's basically been my mantra, up until I could finally get back into my creative pursuits. So it's like I had a brief pit stop in college with a band that was like, we were doing the thing the college bands figuring their thing out do, which is not make music that's terribly good. But that's okay, because it's a learning experience for everyone.
You can't know what's terribly good until you know what's terrible.
Right. And make some like really good lifelong friends along the way.
Totally.
Even when the music is suspect.
Absolutely.
or just early in skill. But yeah, and then I wound up in Chicago, basically like spent a year here kind of just like acclimating, and like I moved here for like a job, so I was like doing the job thing, and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna spend all my money, I'm in the big city, like everything happens here, like all my favorite bands stop here. So it's like I spent 1 year like really living it up, and blew all my money.
Excellent.
And then like had a relationship go up in flames, and then January of like the next year after I'd moved here, I was like, all right, clap, like I guess I have to start a band. Like,
right.
if that, like,
I had
if
my
that,
personal year.
Exactly. It's like I had my personal year. I had my like whirlwind, like yearning, like romantic situationship thing.
Yeah.
And like now that I have a lot of big, strong feelings about that, it's time to really get into a Chicago band again.
Music fodder, man.
Yeah.
I have noticed in my own personal life that the things that are specifically not music have influenced my music the most.
Right.
Not just, stories to tell, but literally just the exhilaration of a roller coaster. That's an exhilaration that you don't get anywhere else, and I don't need to sing about a roller coaster to be able to tap into that exhilaration that I would not have felt had I not been on that roller coaster. But now I can take that exhilaration and totally empathize with somebody who's falling in love, and maybe, you know what I mean? So those are the things that are, I think that's an incredibly smart year. I don't even know if you knew you were doing it. But, having a gap year, if you can do that in school, giving yourself a little meaning to going to college. Why am I going to college? For what am I going to college? So that was really cool. And I think you're the first person I've interviewed that hasn't come up for either because their family was coming or college.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
You were done with school.
Yeah, I was done with school. And for me, it was like, so like I said, was born and raised in like Charlotte, North Carolina. I went to school at Seton Hall in South Orange, New Jersey. And New Jersey is a really... New York? I mean, like, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, the sell, that's the sell of the school is like, it's close to New York. Get an internship in New York. I always thought New York was like maybe a little too claustrophobic, just like a little too dense for me. But I was like happy to be near it, just to visit, the access. Regardless, New Jersey is like a very special, unique place in the United States that I really do love a lot and I miss a lot. But more than anything, when I came home from college, pandemic happened my senior year, basically, or junior year, but was still happening into senior year. And so I come home to Charlotte and I'm like, man, north of the Mason-Dixon line was just more of my people. It's like I came back and, I found friends again in Charlotte, but I was like, this is fine. But I really felt like my people were just like up there. So, I did look around New Jersey, but I also just wanted to look in other big cities where I had some ties. Yeah. So I have an older sister who had lived in Chicago for several years at the time already. We had family in like Ohio, so I was looking around like Cleveland. Yeah. I had a friend who lived in Atlanta, and she was like, "Yo, like Savannah is kind of the place to be." And so I like looked around Savannah, and Chicago came through, and so it's what I ended up. Wow. And it's the city that I wanted to come to the most. Right. Especially, I have a really close relationship with my sister. I was like, I'll have friends built in. It'll be a great time.
No West Coast dreams, huh? No LA.
I just felt like I was like Vegas. We'll have the money for that maybe one day. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, oh, Chicago will be a nice compromise. And, like, I quickly learned that, like, that's not even the case either. But, you live and you learn.
Right. I mean, and that would be such a culture shock. And I know the Carolinas have their own sand, but it's a different kind of sand. I mean, it's literally the opposite coast. I want to back it up a little bit. I have a question here for you that's a great icebreaker. What is the first album you ever bought with your own money? And it can be on iTunes. But, like, this is not a gift. Michael's buying this for himself, and it's the first one you remember.
Right. I'm sure that the first album that I actually bought on iTunes was, like, Daft Punk or something.
Totally.
Because I was, like, very much, like, an electronic kid in, like, the birth years of, like, internet dubstep.
Pop, electronic, dubstep, yes.
Basically all the way through...
I remember Jägermeister.
Yeah. Basically all the way through, like, sophomore or junior year of high school. Yeah. I was big into EDM, like the Monster Cat era and stuff like that. But it's since I just mentioned them, it is worth mentioning that, like, for most of my life, I was, like, a 21 Pilots diehard fanboy. Yeah. And so the first, like, CD physically that I bought for my own, like, possession and to have in my car was Blurry Face. I bought Blurry Face and then Vessel shortly thereafter, but it was technically Blurry Face.
Excellent.
But both albums that are worth shouting out. And you know what? I'm pretty sure that, like, the first album I was ever obsessed with as a child was, like, an NSYNC cassette that we had for, like, a boombox in my room. I was, like, a toddler, like, probably, like, 5 or 6, but I was, like...
Massively overprocessed pop is
play my freaking NSYNC. Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
Ugh, that's awesome. Okay. So we're talking... You're in... a lot of rock groups now. You start with an electronic EDM bass, which I understand. Yeah. It seems to go in one of two directions from there. It's either rock or hip hop, depending on what you're getting from the EDM. If you're getting that thrill, then you want a nice breakdown. You want to slam down, maybe some Lamb of God. But if you really like the party, then you're going to be going towards hip hop, techno. Maybe you'll end up out in the desert, Burning Man, versus like a Warped Tour. What what outside of just where music might lead you, what are your biggest out of music influences? Like we touched earlier, situationships, moves, life experiences. Has there been anything particularly that you've been able to go back to, really dig a lot of gold out of?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely throughout my career as like a musician, as short as it has been, I've like tried to contribute songs, and I just never felt like I had, you know, the specifics. It's like it all sounded corny because it was all vague and it was trite.
Right.
And really, like, this relationship that was like significantly more a friendship than it was anything else for as more of the time. But, you know, as almost more devastating as that is to lose, you know, the really good ones.
Yeah.
And so, like, really that whole arc happened over the course of like 2 years. And it was basically, you know, the beginning of that time where I really started writing a lot. And I think it was also because, you know, the beginning of that relationship was shortly after the end of like another one that had its own twists and turns and roller coaster. And that earlier one is probably when I started my original songwriting escapades. But like, they didn't, you know, I was proud of them more often, but I never had like a full song that was like worth sharing with anyone.
What am I saying?
And then like this, you know, this one that happened in Chicago, you know, I just like January 1, I was actually looking back through my journal. I have an entry from January that was like, you know, that's it. Like this has nowhere else to go. I have nowhere else to say the things I have to say.
Yeah.
So I have to turn this into music or it's going to eat me alive, you know?
That's excellent.
And so Antillion came along at the perfect time because I reached out in all the usual ways, just like Reddit and Facebook pages and stuff, and ended up in a rehearsal, and they were playing music that just had like this air to it that was, you know, it was fun and it was like enjoyable and it was high energy in a way that I really liked, but it also was like serious and dramatic because I felt like I had like serious shit to like say. Yeah, get off my chest, you know? So it was a perfect marriage. And like when they sent me over like their rehearsal track, like that actually became the next single that's coming out.
Excellent.
They like sent me the instrumental and I wrote like the vocal part back on it, and it was like my audition, but it was also like the craziest, most raw outpouring of my soul that I had yet made to date. And it came out of me so easily, and I was like, this felt right. Like something about this music like was meant to click with this period,
so
this chapter.
You brought them up already, but I don't think I knew this. I didn't know that Antillion was a band already. You sound like you joined a project that was ongoing.
Yeah, basically. So Robert and Bobby.
Robert's the drummer.
Yes, drummer and rhythm guitarist. Robert and Bobby. They're both essentially like the progenitor members. They got together first over some shared influences. I think the story is actually like, do you remember Yik Yak? Like the proximity based social media. Yeah? It was like Twitter. They were on, I think, you know, I think they were just like close enough to each other at like high school or something. You're like maybe like early, you know, Robert's earlier university, but yeah, so they were literally in proximity and like were dropping like bands that they both liked. And they were like, oh my god, like we should jam.
Yeah.
So they started it all off, and so Noemi, our lead guitarist, had joined the project as well at the time, and so they had written a couple instrumental tracks, and 3 of those became 3 of the songs on this EP. One of them is Ending on a Bad Note, which is already out.
Love it.
But all of them had no vocals, no real like established idea for vocals. So really, I came in and I auditioned by writing vocals to one track, and then once I got the gig and they were like, yeah, your energy is great, keep going, we just like finished out those songs. I brought them one song that became Bear Trap, and they helped me finish that. And so we kind of got like, you know, an appetizer of the creative process, because it wasn't like really collaborative, but it was like we each had pieces to give and pieces that needed to be filled. And the finished product just like made so much sense. We were like, yeah, this fits.
So when all the pre generated influences are kind of used up, what does collaborating look like now? Like, how do you guys write music now?
Yeah,
all the hey, here's an old idea I had has been used.
No, exactly. So that was something that we were really excited to get to. Like once we finally finished recording this first EP, we were like, we want to get into the writing at the same time, like getting collaborative. And so the two newest songs that we have that we put right back to each other in the set are, I think, the ones that we love the most. They're like the most daring. And those are the ones that have come out of that creative process that's collaborative, where it's like we got together with like, maybe just a single small guitar riff, and it was like, okay, what kind of vibes does this invoke? What feelings does this invoke? Is there a song this makes me think of?
Right.
And that's when we can start kind of like speaking the language where it overlaps with each other and being like, listen to this part here. Can you do something like that? Where, even though I'm the least proficient guitar player of the group by like miles and miles,
right.
But even
on
then,
a technical level,
just on a technical level,
yeah.
But even then, it's like, I was able to, I know just enough like shoegaze chord shapes to like have created this little rhythm part, and then the guys were like, okay, yeah, that like really grooves and moves, and they're like, and Bobby like just starts ripping this like ridiculous like lead solo on it. I'm like, beautiful, wonderful,
awesome.
Exactly what I had in mind, of course. And so it's like, you can hear it, I think, in my voice, but I mean, it's just such an exciting process when the ball starts rolling like that, because when people are just like adding their own things and everyone is like really open-minded to just like what each other thinks sounds cool.
Yeah.
And we approach it with this like process of very much like, well, let's just try it. Like whatever the idea is, just try it.
Nobody else is going to hear it today.
Yeah, just try it, see how it sounds. Because if it sounds worse, then we'll go back. And more often than not, like if it doesn't sound that good, then like it's just hard for the band members to like catch it, and so it just doesn't come out right. But the things that are meant to happen just kind of click.
Will happen.
They're just intuitive, and so it always, those two songs have come out so daring, and the things they attempt are so yeah, they're a little extreme, but it's like the transitions, they sound so good and they hold up live, and just I think the fact that we were all kind of together in the mission room, when we imagine what we want the song to be, it's like everyone's so tight, and so it just those songs have so much more energy live. Even
if there's I don't want to say contention, but if there's like discussion that needs to be had, say a part that you're really like, I'm putting my foot down, it's garbage, or no, this line cannot change, it has to be these lyrics, and here's why. Do you guys just do a trial and error, a vote? Hey, 3 out of 5 of us like this rhythm, so we're going to keep it. Have you not had to cross that bridge really just yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think every once in a while it'll come down to like a vote if we really have to, but it's never like hard feelings. Like more often than not,
excellent.
More often than not, how it works is every change we make and every like large scale decision we make is kind of like has to be unanimous. Like if any one person is not with it, that's usually enough for us to be like, okay, let's run it back until everyone's with it. And so I think it's been nice because it helps everyone feel like they have an equal amount of agency, where it's like, Al, our bass player, can just like pipe up and be like, I don't think that like the vocal part that you do in the intro here just like sounds that good. It just sounds like it comes out of nowhere to me. And it'll be something that is like, it sounds a little more familiar to us, or like the idea came to us because we're used to listening to like music that's like very harsh and aggressive.
Right.
But then like we look back and analyze at the song, and it's like, yeah, absolutely. Like let's just figure something else out there, lean into the singing. Let's lean into what we do. Ended up sounding instantly better, of course. And so it's just great because everyone has this like vested interest in the song sounding as good as possible to them. And so they feel empowered to like, we speak on each other's parts in a way that's really constructive. When
you guys are in your rehearsal space, or even just in your creative space, first off, are those two different spaces, or are you guys getting together and you're playing a song and then somebody plays something funky on the bass and you're like, wait, what was that? And then you build a song from there. Can it come from anywhere? And a little bit more on top of that, are you guys also good with stopping a rehearsal and being like, hey, there might be something to that. Let's focus on writing for the next 15 minutes, record it, and then we'll get back to running the show. But how do you navigate this?
Yeah, definitely. I think, start going backwards first. Like, the rehearsal space is when we need to play like full volume, and this is usually when we're like, a song is mostly written and we're just trying to figure out like transitions, or we're just trying to figure out like, how things will go for the live set, of course. that'll be at like a rehearsal space. And, in Chicago, there's a lot of great ones, you know.
Sure.
We'll go to like Fort Knox or Music Garage, the usual suspects. But then other times it'll just be like at someone's house, and that's usually when we're doing like writing. And thankfully people, we're all kind of like just prolific enough, and like obviously some of us more than others. Like I refer to like Bobby and Robert as the Antillion industrial complex because they just like they can't stop writing song ideas, and they'll just like, and Robert is always like, yeah dude, I'll put drums on that thing that's in the drive or whatever. So, but when we sit down for those sessions, we'll like comb through just like people's little scraps of ideas and just see like what we want to develop more. But also sometimes we'll just be like, hey, here's a song that we all really like a lot. Like, how do we do something like this? How to, and cool. I think that there's a really important aspect of being a good artist where it's like, you just have to accept that you have a lot of learning to do, but the only way you can really learn is like imitating, because like if you like, you're not really good enough to like write something that sounds like a carbon copy of your influences. Like your own style is going to wind up in it. Yeah. So, trying to reproduce something is just as much of like a creative act, even if it's just like this sound or like the way this transition goes from this kind of feel to this kind of feel, just like grabbing those tools. It's just like, I can't paint necessarily a Mozart, but I can still take the same like paintbrushes he used and the same colors and just like make dots in the shape of something, and like that's going to still come out like really cool, even though I'm like obviously trying to pull from someone else's playbook. Right. It's going to be nothing like that. Yeah. It's going to be nothing like that at the end product. And so that's helped us a lot, where it's like, we'll listen to something and be like, oh, that sounds kind of like this song, but I don't know what a B section would sound like. Well, let's go listen to that song. Yeah. Like, what did they do in the B section? It's like, oh, they like dropped this out and like switched this up, or like focused on this element. Well, let's see, what would that look like if we were doing it? Yeah. And I think that's really helped a lot, because we have a lot of those kind of original idea snippets to work with, where someone will just be like, that riff is too good, it has to go somewhere. Yes. But we're also like, I think, good enough students where most of the people in this band can like listen to an influence, whether they've heard it before or not. Yeah. And just kind of break it down and be like, okay, what gives this its sauce? How do we kind of implement the important part?
I love that. Have you guys had to play on the road yet? Like travel outside the city?
Oh, not yet, but we really want to. Like we keep saying that that's something that we want to do like this year, like in 2024, like maybe back half. Like we have our sights set. Like there's a great music scene in like Lansing, Michigan. Yeah. I would be happy going as far as like St. Louis, but we need to keep reasonable. But still, I mean, like Milwaukee, it's like 2.5 hours. Yeah. Like, so it really is accessible, and we are going to try and travel soon. And I think that'll be fun, because like I just love a road trip
for sure.
Like on one hand, but also I think that there really is something to be said about your ability to like show up far from home and like adapt on the fly, and like you couldn't be more out of water, and like
for real,
if a problem comes up you have to solve it. But also just like that kind of requires an amount of bravery and daring, where it's like the people receiving you also have like a reciprocal amount of love for what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like there's just something that's just like so fundamentally like wonderful and uplifting, and like you just get so much energy from the community when you play locally, but especially if you play on the road. Like anytime a touring band comes through, it's just like an outpouring of love, and that's what's so great. I mean, it doesn't pay the bills, but like but like it's kind of that's the secret sauce of old days, is just the fact that you can show up in a town and blast someone's ears off and then sleep on their living room floor, and they and eat their cereal, and then leave in the morning. Like that's beautiful.
So you mentioned the love and the outpouring, especially here locally, and I've been trying to kind of tie this all in to your actual stage presence, you specifically, but your whole band is pretty rad. But you are just Mr. Positivity. If you had a bigger stage, you'd be all over it. I'm specifically mentioning Brothers because there's barely enough room on that stage. So are you trying to connect with that positivity? Are you genuinely that happy? Did somebody drop you on your head and your sad is broken? Like Is this all? What gets it? What gets you there? Especially at the end of because you're a local band and nobody's paying us millions of dollars yet,
Right?
And you're
right.
probably coming from work, maybe a bad day, and you are Mr. Positive. How? Why?
Yeah, I think honestly, it's a lot of gratitude. Just like we just get a chance, we get a chance to play so rarely as musicians.
Yeah.
It's like even in a DIY scene that's so vibrant, where it's like if you wanted to play like every weekend, a couple times a weekend, you could. But even still, then it's like in the grand scheme of things, it's like in an ideal world, I would get to devote myself to music like maybe every day that wasn't a day of rest,
Yeah.
And so I think because that is something that is like so utterly far away, like every day that I get to like really do something like productive with my music is a day that I'm just like extremely grateful for, because they're so much more rare
This is what you want
than every other day of my life. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so those days I'm riding this high the whole day of just the opportunity to get to like share music with people.
Yeah.
And there's a lot about being an artist, and I'm jacking this from an interview that I like literally just watched. But there's a lot of being an artist that's about like
You're like being in Foo
that's
Fighters
about
is a real difficult
right.
thing.
yeah. There's a lot about being an artist that's like about trust
Yeah,
and like
yes.
trust with your audience. And I think that
Who are strangers usually?
right, exactly. And it's like it's one thing when you're like making music for like your audience, quote unquote, like when
Right.
you have an audience. But like exactly when you're playing to strangers or just to like your buddy's buddy who's like showing up because they asked.
For sure.
There's a trust there as well, where it's like I'm just so grateful that in this like busy world someone would take the time out of their night to come see, a couple local bands at a bar, It's like that's wonderful. And so part of it is like the gratitude and just like the excitement of getting to do it. But I think something else is that like I say this frequently in like rehearsal and when we're making decisions and even just like content stuff and even like song titles. If our music is going to be very serious and raw, which I want it to be like serious and vulnerable and raw.
Mm-hmm.
I want everything else about the way we present ourselves to be accessible and friendship and not taking yourself too seriously, because like I think that the kind of music that we're making gets a bad rap for being just kind of like scary and like just like punk in the way that is just like unapproachable and like prickly.
Yeah.
And I don't want that at all. And so it's like if I'm gonna get up on stage and like thrash my body around really crazy and like scream at you, like I'm also want to like smile a lot and like thank you really often just for like going on that ride with me, because I also want to make it clear like it's not about me exercising my demons for a captive audience. It's about like how awesome it is that like we get to share the thing we're doing here.
That was another thing I wanted to touch on, because I feel like when I'm doing these interviews or just talking to musicians, they're either doing it for themselves, as in I get this gratification or this maybe not gratification, but just this recognition of, oh, these people like me, something that I'm missing out of my life, or I'm doing it for them, which is what I think I'm doing, because I was the kid that was always trying to keep his family together, so I'm trying to keep the world together by having a good time and everybody is love and let's all but together. And then there's the third person who's just gonna do it whether there's people there or not. I feel like you'd be jamming at the end of the world if you were the last person on earth. You'd find a guitar somewhere, make some noise, and then be like, oh, I miss people, but like so are you, is that you just doing it because you'd be doing it if nobody else was doing it?
Yeah, I honestly, I think so. And, there's an imposter syndrome we all have to get over,
Always.
of course.
And then I don't think that ever goes away. I've heard plenty of big name stars just be like, I'm still Dave.
Right, exactly. And, so I feel sometimes like, I'm not enough of a real... I feel like I don't write often enough that I can call myself like this prolific musician who has like this crazy drive to write, because I see myself as like creatively lazy, like, oh, I should practice more often than I do, or I should write more often than I do. But then I look back and, my friends will be like, Mike, it's like you wrote like 6 original songs this year that are like cool, that you're like willing to share with people. Like, that's awesome. And so I think part of it is overcoming, the imposter syndrome aspect of it. But like ultimately I think I would do this to nobody, because like some of the most important songs I've written have been entirely for myself. It's like there's songs that I've only shared really with like close friends creatively, but like I really wouldn't put them out. I have no desire to put them out. They're just like things that had to come out of me that it was worth being proud of to like share with the people who were really close to me.
Yep.
But it was never like for an audience, And like I still think that, like one of the best songs I've ever written and one of the ones that came to me like a stroke of inspiration. It was like I was writing the Bible or something, I like woke up one morning and I was like, this whole song is just going to flow out of me in the next 6 hours,
God, I love that.
And like that song is like, it might show up on like something, like maybe a side project, but like really at the end of the day, it's like, it's just something that's really dear to me because it was the first thing I wrote that I was like, wow, I'm like extremely proud of this. And it was for the person it was for. And it was for, my close friends who like had a vested interest in me as like a creative artist.
Yeah.
But besides that, it's like, it wasn't for any audience, just like for the love of it. And so I really do love that I get to share like the music with people, but more than anything, if me and the band were just in the rehearsal space every week, just like shredding each other's faces off to nobody
right.
and just like taking recordings from the middle of the room, like honestly, that would still be worth showing up and doing like for the rest of my life, because like even just the rehearsals are like so much fun, just getting to be in that atmosphere, create with people, have fun with people, whether it's like us 5 in a room or like when we're really lucky, us and like 60 people, 80 people in a room.
The one thing that always gets me about music is that it always seems to be a way to communicate when words don't do enough work. Because I have something that's a bit bigger than these words that I don't, or maybe I don't have the right words. There are writers that don't use guitars, whatever, authors.
Yeah.
Some people might call them. But I personally love to escape into music when I'm listening or consuming, and then when I'm creating, I'm using it to connect others. Do you use concerts as a way to escape, as a way to connect, or are you just, this is it, man? You're not using it, you're just going to it because you love it.
Right. I think that, for the bands that I really enjoy, for the like acts that I'm going in to see, like I've gotten to see Dead Poet Society a couple times. They're a modern rock band that I really enjoy. And so every album that they've released since I've started following them, so like their debut, it's -- if you go to look it up.
Okay.
And then the one that just released, Fission, they both came out at like kind of perfect points where it's like the lead singer just has like, is like, bro, stop living my life, like get out of my head.
Yeah.
So I think that, the concerts where it's the artists I really already follow and like I connect with music because of like a personal resonance that I have with like the lyrics more often than not. And so when I go to those concerts, I'm seeking connection there, and I love the spaces that are usually made there because it's honestly, it's a lot of figures who are like, all right, guys, like whether it's like serious or kind of silly, it's like, all right, guys, like, like clap your hands or like go crazy, go crazy, like for feeling your feelings, like go crazy for like being your real self, like go crazy for crying.
Yeah.
Like let's give it up for like being emotional and vulnerable.
Excellent.
Like that's just the spaces that happens in, and that feels great. So I love going to those shows for connection, but also it's like the local DIY scene is very much an escape for me, for it's like, I feel like, I'm presently unemployed, but like I'm clawing to get back into this machine that like juiced my soul for every last drop of feeling for the time that I was in it. So it's like a real like cognitive dissonance thing. But like now that I'm armed with this DIY community and scene, I feel like much more prepared to go back because that space really feels like so free of all of everyone's like, everyone's like rent's going up and like the McChicken is like $4. Like shit's crazy.
I looked at Taco Bell's menu for $20 the other day.
Oh my God. I would shoot a man for a $5 cravings box. Bring it back. And so, it's like all of the pressures and like, that's just being lighthearted, but like all of the real like shit that's going on both in people's daily lives across the world, just in like the larger shifting structures of oppression that kind of crunch all of us, like we can all just kind of show up and have fun and just be loud and like, within reason of your neighbors and their space, like kind of get unruly and like kind of like just break some norms and just like and scream and like dress to the nines and like however you want, and like it's just a great scene that doesn't have any of the normal like, you know, gatekeeping or like, you know, inaccessibility of kind of your standard sort of like nightlife, like, oh, let's go out and forget all our cares, like scene. Like that gets really expensive, but like, dude, I can go down to the Empty Bottle on a Monday and get like a $3 beer and watch a free show that blows my mind, you know,
$10
with like a room full, and like the room will be full on that Monday, you know, and like that's awesome. And so like I think that's great, where it's like, you know, that is connecting as well. It's like less connecting with the music and more just connecting with the people around you. But that's what's beautiful, is that no matter what kind of music you're making, you're doing one or both either way.
Switching gears here just a little bit. What is your dream lineup? Now, this would be either to see if you just kind of want to unplug and watch it happen, or if you feel like, you know, putting in the work, you can put yourself on the bill if you want to.
Right. Oh man, that's awesome. I'm going to say just for seeing, and I kind of have a theme in mind, because my favorite band right now, and that I draw a lot of inspiration from, and just musically, but also just kind of the musical artistic mission, is Cleopatra. Okay. And I think that I would want to see them live in concert very badly, because just with the timing of COVID and everything, I just haven't been in the cities when they've been touring, when touring finally started happening again. And so they've been my favorite band for like 2.5 years. I've gotten a lot of inspiration out of them, but I haven't gotten to see them live. Okay. But they're like a 2-person rock act.
Love it.
Lots of distortion. And so like almost thematically, I feel like if I saw them, it would have to be in a lineup with like the White Stripes, you know, or like Jack White, whichever way you want to run that.
Got it.
And like Royal Blood, who I know you know.
So minimal, but distortion heavy and
exactly.
Cool.
And like you know, Death from Above, like 1975. Like that would be everything.
Okay.
That would be everything.
That
would be everything I need. Just like a day of like one guitar and one drummer, just like absolutely like blowing everyone's heads off from the stage.
Give yourself an octaver, dude. It's the best.
Yes, exactly. I feel like that would be like a dream lineup for sure.
When it comes to the non-sexy part of being in a band, the logistics, how do you navigate emails and venues and getting 5 people in a damn room together on a consistent basis? How do you navigate all that?
Yeah, I think, you know, something you hear is that, and this is basically true, is that almost every band has like 1 or 2 people doing a lot of like the paperwork, if nothing else. You know, sometimes that extends to like social media as well. I think that more than not, this band has been pretty democratic, like a pretty good split of people, like just being willing to help out. Like, you know, I think that, you know, me and Robert probably do the most like inventory bookkeeping type stuff and like the most social media management, but like Bobby and Noemi like also get on the social media account. They'll reply to messages. Noemi is in like other bands and also has like helped fill in as a guitarist for several other bands. Yeah. She has a lot of great connections, and so she's helping us get like shows a lot, and so the booking is kind of like a split responsibility as well in a way that's really, really nice. And so, you know, since I've been unemployed, I have had a lot of extra time to do stuff like, you know, I can whip up like flyers and I can like print the merch and stuff, and like that's really no problem at all. But, you know, even though there is still like 1 or 2 of us who maybe like take more charge, everyone is like so like actively involved,
ready to
like
go.
Everyone is so committed, and like
you have roles that people have fallen into, but nobody's gonna miss an opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. And like, and you know, people are not like, you know, people aren't flaking on rehearsal.
Yeah,
it's like,
nobody seems like a flake in Antillion.
Yeah, exactly. And like that was something that like was really impressive to me. Like from the first time that I like auditioned with them, is like, you know, Robert had like a recorder set up like starting and stopping like every take of every song. And after rehearsal that night, they were up on the Google Drive, like named and organized.
Wow,
it's like,
I'm not even that good.
You know, it's like exactly.
Shout out.
And like and you know, when we had a member who, prospective member who like wasn't, you know, just wasn't consistently coming to rehearsals, they would flake without as much notice as is reasonable.
Right.
You know. They had like a really low tolerance. They were like, yeah, we should get him out like pretty quick. And I was the new guy at the time, and I was like, oh,
didn't want to step on any toes.
Right. And I was like, oh my God, these guys are like really serious and
it.
they really care. And like that meant a lot to me. So
that makes you want to care more. I
yeah, no, exactly. So that's been really inspiring because that was the kind of, you know, environment that I had in that very first band where it's like things felt right, where it's like everyone really wanted it to happen, believed in it. Just like, it's obviously, it can only be a hobby for all of us because, like, you know, point to me, like, I couldn't tell you somebody I know in real life who's like paying their bills with music. Right. At least that I know in like 1 degree of separation.
No, I think Ricky is.
Probably Ricky. What a homie.
Ricky.
Shout out
I know
Ricky.
that he does bartending and stuff too, but that dude's got a show like every 15 minutes.
Right,
I swear to God, that guy's working harder than no wonder he's ripped. He's sprinting between venues every night.
So you know, it's like it's a hobby for everyone, but it's nice when you find, you know, you do have to find those people, and like there's nothing wrong with bands that are like just fun either. Like they're also like bands that are just for fun put on great sets all the time. But like it is really great when you like find those people and everyone just has that like seriousness about them where it's like, yeah, this isn't anyone's job, it's not life or death, but like it's important and we respect each other's like time. Care for it and time for it. Exactly.
When it keep going on, there we go. So it sounds like your band is pretty inspirational with their kind of gusto and their ready to go-ness. Outside of other musical influences, you know, what brings out the music in you?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely been like things that have happened to me in my life, like besides the influence we've already got over, that also lended in. And I think, you know, getting laid off was definitely one. Like I've talked about, I'm unemployed, and you know, just like work and capitalism and just, you know, the cycle that we're all in, and just like looking around at all my friends, and I'm friends with a lot of people. You know, I'm 24. I'm friends with a lot of people who are like, you know, 26, 28, 30,
right.
And you know,
yeah,
and just knowing and just like looking at their lives and being like, wow, like we like, you know, I did 1 year of like having to live in a big city, working a full-time job, and none of the numbers making sense. Yeah. Like, and just like looking at people who have been doing it like 5 or 6 years longer, and it's like are no appreciably less stressed or less pressured than I am. You know, it's like, okay, you know, maybe you can save $2,000 just in time for like you to develop a medical condition that requires you to get 1 MRI. You know,
right.
Pff, goodbye.
See ya.
And so, you know, kind of like that overall system, and also just like getting laid off for sure, you know, even though that happened after I'd written some of the songs that you can probably like, you know, that definitely like hit harder now, like Bear Trap and Ending on a Bad Note, you know, definitely apply even harder. Just, I think that that's a big part of it. And, you know, some of the bands that I really enjoy and that I've drawn inspiration from either in the past or since I got into Antillion and started listening to more music in like our genre, kind of like the post-hardcore riffier stuff. You know, there is a lot of that great music that kind of tackles that kind of like, you know, that systematic, you know, look around, like this is wrong, and like we don't have to be okay with that, or like you don't have to feel like this is normal.
So you will process
like Thursday and like at the drive-in, bands like that, you know.
So you do process the world through your music. It's not just, you know, I'm having fun, and I mean it is. You're going to be making music no matter what, but you do find a kind of a almost a therapeutic outlet in lyrics, music, performance, seeing, consuming. It's all, would you say, loosely tied to therapy?
Right, yeah, exactly. So like a significant amount of my lyrics and the songs that we have so far are exactly, it's like processing like things that are personal to me, but some of those influences and the songs get a little bit out into something that I think we're going to do a lot more looking forward, which is kind of like taking those things that are personal to me and also infusing it with this outward kind of community looking, you know, message or tonality of just like speaking on less about like me and you, like the you that like the
Yeah.
song, the song is about or for or whatever,
sure.
the narrative of the me and you, and making it more about like
The it.
yeah, the it and the us,
Yeah.
and the we and the thing that we are all going through, kind of infusing a little bit more of that, because we've talked about it as a band, and it's like, yes, there is an inherent level of connection by just like sharing your real human vulnerable feelings, because
Totally.
someone will relate to some of that, and just knowing they're not alone in that feeling is enough to give them some solace. But it is worthwhile, like when it's coming from a place of authenticity, to like go the step further and like, in the music you can extend that hand,
Yeah.
in the music you can give that like that lift of hopefulness, where it's like sometimes you write a song and you just feel terrible, and like the song is anxious and it ends feeling anxious and bad and dreadful.
But that happens sometimes.
But like that's some songs, but like I think something that's creeping in more as we kind of like turn the music more outwards into the world, like now that's like, oh my god, we're sharing with people.
Yeah.
Like now it's time to make the music like have a little bit of that responsibility. Like if you're gonna ask people to be a community, like give that community a value to hold on to. That's not just like,
Absolutely.
oh, we have all been hurt in the same way.
Right.
Like that's
The what,
that's valid
now
as
you wanna give
well.
them the why.
Yeah, but
Why
yeah,
we're
let's
all
give
here
them
over and
exactly
over.
like the how do we move through this together, know?
Yeah.
How do we move through this world together? How do we move through these things, these experiences that we've had together? So I think that it's definitely starting to get more outside influenced, and something that's been great is like, this first EP that's going to come out later this year. It's like it is very inward looking, but it's also processing these things from like before I found this band, but also this community of music. And I feel like a different person. Like, there are hard days, but like, my life has been totally changed just by the existence of this community. And so it's definitely going to be something that reflects more into our music, because, I can truthfully say, like, I reached out to people with my vulnerabilities, and in a state where I like really needed like authenticity and friends, and like that reaching out like did something really positive for me, and finding those people, stepping outside my comfort zone a lot, did something really positive for me. And so that is, it's now time to start infusing that message too. And not that every song has to be like sunshine and rainbows,
For sure.
but like, just like putting some of the hopefulness in, because that hopefulness is now coming from a place of authentic experience too.
Excellent. Okay. So I guess my last question for you specifically, if music wasn't the thing you were doing, I think you've touched on radio already.
Yeah.
What would you be doing if it wasn't music?
Yeah. We did a little bit of this off wax, but I worked at this radio station in college, WSOU in South Orange, 89.5 pirate radio, because we were the Seton Hall Pirates. And it's an all like modern rock and like active rock, like more often than not heavy metal station.
Ooh.
So that was a blast, and that also kind of got me into like just how awesome like the like small genre like niche communities, how cool and supportive they can be. And so I think that was the coolest thing I did in college for sure. I love talking, obviously. I love music, and also this is not a visual medium, but I wore 2 pieces of sports related overwear today. I'm a big
North
sports
Carolina
head.
jacket and the Blackhawks hoodie underneath it.
Yeah. So I'm a big sports guy, and so if I could run it back, I would really see myself like
Sportscasting.
sportscasting,
Yeah.
or like being a DJ on the radio, something to that effect. I think would really suit me, because being in the booth just like it's a command center. It's a cool feeling,
But you're a sports guy too on the side, so
Yeah. Even just like getting to offer my like mostly uneducated takes on the game that I watch in front of me is beautiful. I mean, like
it's almost more fun. We've got ESPN.
right. It's like, and
I want MSPN. I want Michael to be like, that the guy going fast is
Yeah.
about to do the thing. He did it.
He
You
did
didn't
it.
say it. I can't tell you about it.
yes. Oh, exactly that. Exactly. I might not know the X's and O's that well, but I know when something cool happens.
Absolutely. There's a lot of noise when somebody makes a goal.
Yeah, that's what's important.
All right, so give me the plug. What's Antillion got coming up? I know you got an EP, if not a full album. You've got shows coming up. What's going on?
Yeah. So coming up in March we've got 2 shows, the 15th and the 22nd.
15th at Book Club, right?
Yeah, 15th
I'll
at
be
Book
there.
Club, and then the 22nd at Backyard 606. So it's going to be 2 Fridays in a row. 2 really,
I've never seen
really
Backyard
awesome
606,
shows.
so I might-
Listen, definitely come through. The
Yeah,
guy who
yeah.
runs it, Brian, absolute homie.
say hey.
You would love to meet him. He would love to meet you. He's like really such a
do
cool
it.
guy. So definitely come through to either of those shows. Those are super fun.
Yep.
Ask a Punk for the address. Or, just any of the bands on
Holler at
Instagram.
you.
Yeah. DM them. And then, this also for that March 22nd show, we've got the next single coming. We've got Ending on a Bad Note already, but
Yep,
coming
it's
out
on
is...
Spotify. I'll link it all.
Yes. Coming out is Maybe It's Cruel. That's
Sick.
2 of the songs that are going to be on an EP we're trying to drop this summer. So only a couple Fridays until a new song comes out, and our first song was very, it was very much like the appetizer, like kind of more widely accessible, like,
Totally.
but also like great, like pop punk kind of
Awesome
anthemic vibe. But this one definitely is like the moodier, more dramatic, and it's the way we open our sets when we play live. So,
Yeah.
it definitely, we go like full face, like this is Antillion in all of our like eyelinered glory. So it's like, if you're ready for this full spectrum of that, then you're ready for everything that's going to come
Excellent.
after. And that's another great reason why we wanted to release this one next, because if you like this, then everything that's going to come after, like you're prepared for.
I love it. So we've got shows coming up March 15th and the 22nd. We've got your EP coming out in the summer. Pay attention. I'll link everything below in the description. Michael, thank you so much for chatting with us today, man. This was awesome.
Thank you so much for having me, and you'll have to tell other Ryan I was sorry I missed him.
I will. I'll if I can find him again after what happened this morning.
I'll dap him up on the way out.
Thanks, man.